El presidente Donald Trump está asustado y, como siempre que se ve acorralado, elige huir. El cierre del gobierno ya nos respira en la nuca y aunque intenta culpar a otros, sabe que el costo lo persigue. El gran negociador llegó sin palanca, sin votos y sin plan. Por eso hoy no da la cara. Vamos a desmenuzar qué está pasando y cómo responder. Recordatorio rápido, si les gusta este tipo de videos, nos ayudaría muchísimo que le dieran el botón de me gusta, se suscribieran si aún no lo han hecho y comenten su opinión, ya que el 98% de quienes nos ven todavía no están suscritos y juntos podemos hacer crecer a esta comunidad. Ahora sí, pasemos con la noticia.
We're shutting down because Donald Trump thinks he's a king. This was totally avoidable, but Donald Trump told Republicans don't negotiate with Democrats. That's why this government is shutting down. We didn't shut down when Joe Biden was president. Why? Because Democrats, when they were in the majority, took their responsibility to govern seriously, reached out across the aisle, and built bipartisan funding agreements with Republicans. But what is most important now that we are in this shutdown, is for Democrats to understand that our cause is righteous, and that if we approach this argument with confidence and with gusto, we will win it in the American public. But if we look weak, if we look like we don't believe in our cause, then we will lose this argument, and the country will suffer. What are we saying? We aren't asking for the moon. We are simply saying we don't want health insurance premiums to go up by 75% on the American public. That's what Republicans have engineered as a means to pay for their giant tax cut for billionaires and corporations. We're not asking for some big new healthcare program. We're simply saying if we're going to vote for a budget, we want that budget to not increase premiums on families across this country by 75%, bankrupting American families. You know what else we want? We want this president to start acting lawfully. I have no obligation to vote for a budget that destroys our democracy. In fact, I have a moral obligation to oppose a budget that funds a pursuit of the president's enemies through a campaign of harassment, intimidation, and imprisonment. The American people don't want this giant increase in premiums. The American people don't want the president censoring his critics, locking up his political enemies. But the only way we win this argument is by going out there and being loud, consistent, and confident that the American people are on our side. This fight is righteous, protecting American families from bankruptcy due to Trump's giant cost increases. This fight is righteous, protecting American democracy from destruction. And so let's go out there.
El encuadre fue completamente directo, salud y Estado de Derecho. Si el presupuesto sirve para subir primas y para convertir a justicia en garrote, la respuesta correcta es no. Ojo al detalle clave que menciona, el oficialismo necesita que la oposición luzca débil para ganar el relato. Si los demócratas sostienen el eje, no más primas infladas, no más persecución desde el Ejecutivo y tienen mayoría social. Por eso, al verse argumentados, la bancada de Trump empuja al bulo de la salud para ilegales. Veamos cómo se resquebraja cuando le meten datos en vivo.
$85 billion has been saved already in fraud, waste, and abuse.
What you did was narrow the eligibility for certain people to get access to the ACA subsidies. What they want to do is undo the changes that Republicans made in that. But basically, wouldn't that only affect people who do have legal status, people who are refugee seekers here in the United States, asylum seekers here?
Those are two totally different issues. Now, they've created this as a new argument that they have as to why they should not keep the government open, but they're arguing a December policy debate for a September funding issue. The subsidies that you're talking about don't expire until the end of December.
No. Those are the subsidies for just everyday Americans. That's one thing that obviously has been the main premise of their argument. But you're saying they want to give free health care to people who are in the United States illegally.
That is exactly what the effect will be.
But when I looked at it, there's a little nuance because they want to undo changes that y'all made, narrowing who is eligible to get that. Those are people who are refugee seekers, asylum seekers. They're not technically people who are here illegally, just cross the border.
No, this is exactly what will happen. And Maxine Waters admitted, I think accidentally today on the House steps, they want to give health care to everybody.
But Maxine Waters is not in charge. She's not the one. She didn't write this proposal.
She's one of the senior leaders in the House.
That Democrats are
and everybody should Google it and read their counter proposal yourself.
But you see my point, right? You're making this argument that they want to just give health care to everyone who's here illegally. This is not for people who cross the border and don't have paperwork. These are people who have temporary protected status.
Entonces, cuando la mentira se topa con el boletín oficial, no hay asalto al sistema de salud. Hay un intento de vaciar la cobertura para millones y encubrirlo con un espantajo migratorio. ¿Cuál es el resultado? Sin base técnica ni votos, la Casa Blanca repliega y aquí viene el dato político. Como reportó Hakeem Jeffries, no hubo contacto del Ejecutivo con líderes demócratas sin base técnica ni votos. La Casa Blanca se repliega. Y aquí tengo un post, un Twitter, el cual publicó Nicholas Wu, que dice que Jeffries dice a los periodistas que no ha habido contacto con los líderes republicanos desde que comenzó el cierre. Los republicanos han cerrado el gobierno porque no quieren brindar la atención médica a los estadounidenses de clase trabajadora y ahora andan por el Capitolio mintiendo al respecto. Si el plan es el silencio y el chantaje, toca definir el terreno nosotros. Escucha cómo AOC traduce este conflicto a algo que la gente sí siente en el bolsillo.
I mean, Chris, we're here to help people. We are here in the midst of this destruction of the federal government, the federal safety net, $1 trillion eviscerated from people's health care, their Medicare, their Medicaid in this country, with prices that are skyrocketing and life becoming completely untenable for the American people. We are here to try to be a backstop and to be that backstop, which is what the American people have elected us to do.
So right now there's this sort of back and forth about the ACA tax credits. And there's kind of a strange dynamic that I want to get your sense of, right? Because at one level, negotiating over the ACA tax credits is important. I mean, there are people who are going to see their premiums go up 15, 20%, like huge amounts are going to spike. Republicans don't like these extenders. Democrats do. They think it's good for people. But that's fully in the lane of like normal politics. And then at the same time, like the president of the United States assembled 800 military commanders to say, I want you're going to have to go to war against your fellow citizens in American cities. And I think people are having a little bit of a hard time of like, we're going to have a fight on the shutdown about the tax credits, but not about the president wants to declare war on Americans, even though I understand those two are conceptually distinct. Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, Chris, but I think that's something for us to really set the record straight here on. This is not a fight over tax credits. This is a fight over your ability to go to a pharmacy and afford your insulin. We're not talking about just 15 or 20% increases in people's premiums. Tomorrow, healthcare companies, and today, healthcare companies are finalizing the premiums that everyday Americans are going to be paying. And we are talking about a doubling of monthly healthcare premiums, not even including your deductible, in terms of what people are going to be paying next year because of $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that were put together earlier this year. And I don't know about anybody else, but I do not think that this is just about a tax break or a small tax extender. This is about fighting not just on tax breaks, community health centers, and ensuring that we have a stability of the American healthcare system. And when Republicans use a legislative mechanism to gut the American healthcare system, we have to use a legislative mechanism in order to restore it and to fight for it. Because at the end of the day, people may talk about tax credits this and tax credits that. What they do understand is when you have insulin and you can't afford it. What they do understand is when your kid has chemotherapy or your spouse gets diagnosed with cancer and you go into a hospital and it doesn't get covered. And you have to choose life and death, what this is about. Now, that does not mean that we ignore the abhorrent violation of law and norms and what is happening with our U.S. cities, but we have a broad spectrum of ways and places that we can fight, including our governors, our attorney generals, and our state and municipal leaders, as you just saw.
So I just want to make sure I understand this just from your perspective here. So, and I think this is generally the view of congressional leadership as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong. If there was bipartisan compromise, right? If everyone came together, the leaders of the parties, the president, and said, yes, these 5 things, we're going to make sure that these premium supports keep going. We're going to fund community health centers, whatever the sort of asks on appropriation around people's affordable health care. If those were met, Democrats would be a yes. Like, that is the box that this is happening in, as opposed to we can't fund a Department of Justice that prosecutes political enemies or whatever else might be out there.
Well, let me tell you, Chris, the mechanism by which that deal is locked is not just about agreeing in concept on tax credits. We need to do it with no tricks, no games, and no backdoors, which includes rescissions. And when we talk about rescissions, that is the mechanism that the federal government is using to gut and destroy rule of law across the board. So we are fighting to ensure that health care is protected for every American. But the way that we do that also means that the only way that you guarantee that is by forcing them to adhere to the rule of law, which means eliminating the rescission loopholes that they put in the CR earlier this year, which the Senate unfortunately had caved on then, and we're ensuring that doesn't happen now.
Yeah, the quick 10-second version for people that haven't followed this is that, you know, you need 60 votes to get the filibuster to appropriate funds for the government, but they can pass a rescission, which is to claw back some of the money already agreed to by 50 votes. So they have this kind of like cake and eat it too model where it's like, oh yeah, we'll come together, we'll pass a bipartisan appropriations bill, and then when we've done that, then we'll go and get rid of the stuff we don't like, which just seems like an insane way to negotiate.
It's no way to negotiate. And again, we don't even have to get into the technicalities of this. But what is important to understand is that the way that you honor an agreement and the way that we honor our fight for health care and to define and to also protect everyday Americans' ability to afford their health care, to cover their kids, to defend Medicaid. Those are the same mechanisms that we use to defend our rule of law, to defend the federal workers that we are trying to protect in this shutdown. You know, Donald Trump is trying to play this bluffing game of, well, maybe what we're going to do is hold all the federal workforce hostage and fire everybody. Donald Trump has been firing everybody. We saw this with DOJ. We've seen this at the State Department. We've seen this at the Department of Justice. They are firing everybody. They are completely eliminating the federal workforce. And in order for us to stop this madness, we have to put a stop to it, and we have to stop enabling their abuse of power, including their use of rescissions. And when we're fighting on their health care, it forces them to act in ways in accordance with the law in other ways too.
Zanja el encuadre no es un tecnicismo, es vida real. O hay respaldo claro y sin doble llave para mantener la cobertura, o no hay trato. Y si del otro lado solo hay eslóganes y amenazar con despidos, entonces es momento de plantarse, marcar líneas rojas, explicar la trampa de las rescisiones y convertir la negociación en defensa de lo esencial: salud, legalidad y trabajo público, por supuesto. Entonces, después de todo esto, Trump huyó del diálogo porque perdió el arma principal, el miedo. Hoy su bloque no puede sostener ni el mito de la mano dura eficiente ni el cuento de la salud para ilegales. La táctica es clara: cerrar, mentir y esperar rendición. La respuesta debe ser más clara aún: hablar alto, votar en contra del chantaje y amarrar un acuerdo sin trampas que proteja a las familias de primas impagables. Esto no soluciona con cartas enérgicas, se gana fijando condición pública, transparentes y verificables. Si el presidente corre, que corra. La ciudadanía necesita representantes que se queden, expliquen y peleen. Ya por último, y si llegaste hasta aquí, si este análisis te resultó útil, suscríbete, deja tu me gusta y comparte este video. Como dijimos al inicio, el 98% de quienes nos ven no están suscritos. Ayúdenos a crecer esta comunidad y llegar a 1000 suscriptores. Nos vemos en el próximo Rumor de Estado.